get started off on the presentation. Good evening, everyone, again, and once again, a warm welcome to everyone for this presentation. Thanks for joining me on a Sunday evening. It's been pouring cats and dogs on this side of Bangalore, but yeah, I think let's get started off on this, and people would join in as we go along. So today, I just thought I'll take like about 40 to 45 minutes and go over a few of my experiences at Masai Mara, how my photography has been shaped by the landscape, the wildlife, the sightings that we've had at Mara. Uh, so I'll take about, yeah, like I said, I'll take about 40 to 45 minutes, followed by a question and answer session. And if you have any questions, feel free to type it out in the chat box, or raise your hand, and we'll see if we can accommodate them while we're kind of going through the session. A very quick introduction for those of you who don't know about me, and that's a very out of context photograph. Sorry for that. I just couldn't find a decent photograph of myself for Masai Mara. But I'm Shreeram, and I am a professional wildlife photographer. I am a co-founder and mentor at Tata Photography. And my training or my education has rather been completely different from photography. I was an engineer. I did my engineering from BITS Pilani, then I did my MBA. Worked in the corporate for a few years, and then got into photography. The passion for wildlife and photography was so strong that it's still been going on for the past 16 years. That's my email ID and my Instagram, just in case you want to connect with me. And that's the company I run. It's called Tata Photography. We've been running this company since 2011. So it's been a good 13 years, 13 and a half. That photograph is in fact from our first trip in 2011 to this place called Hampi near Bangalore. We do a lot of photography travel around the globe. In fact, over the last couple of months, we've been to Bhutan, we've been to Borneo. We are also kind of like, over the next few months, we're heading out to Kyrgyzstan, then Masai Mara, Antarctica, of course, a lot of places in India. We're going to Ladakh, we're going to Zanskar, we're going to Goa. So a whole lot of trips, largely focused on our natural and cultural heritage. So we do a lot of wildlife photography tours, landscape photography, culture and festival photography tours and stuff. We are a small team. We are a passionate team of professional photographers and mentors who kind of help, who kind of travel along on these trips and help the participants make interesting photographs. So Masai Mara is a national reserve of Kenya. It's located on the border of Kenya and Tanzania. All of us would have heard of Serengeti, through documentaries and a lot of the TV shows and all growing up, a lot of the National Geographic magazines and stuff. The Serengeti ecosystem is a massive ecosystem spanning about 30,000 square kilometers across Tanzania and a little bit into Kenya. That's where Masai Mara is. The Masai Mara actually forms a tiny little part of the Serengeti ecosystem. It's only about 5% in area towards the northeastern end of the Serengeti. The Masai Mara is, of course, named after the community called Masai. They span across a large part of Kenya as well as the northern parts of Tanzania. For the past 500 or so years, they have been part of this ecosystem, and they rely on the lands to sustain their cattle as well as themselves and their families. A lot of their customs, a lot of their rituals are tied to the land and the animals, the wildlife that exists over there. Like when we go to Masai Mara, we actually get to interact, like the place where we stay is run by Masais. Our guide, our drivers, all of them are from the Masai community. We get to interact a lot with them or, at Masai Mara. So what makes Masai Mara so iconic for wildlife photography, right? Like you have Serengeti, which is this massive ecosystem of about 30,000 square kilometers in this tiny little part. And why is it that so many people flock to Masai Mara for watching wildlife and photographing it? It's because of the habitat. Right? Masai Mara is largely dominated by what we call the Mara Plains. The Mara Plains are these undulating savannas that form a large portion of the park, and these are dotted with trees. These are these iconic African landscapes, as we call them, that we keep seeing in photographs or in documentaries and stuff. A part of the Mara is also a riverine forest. These are the forests that are along the Mara River and its tributaries. You have the tributaries called Talik and Sand rivers. So these forests are similar to what you're also seeing in the photograph on the right side, which is largely filled with trees and shrubs. They're quite dense ecosystem. And then you have these hills on the eastern part of Masai Mara. These are very less visited parts of the Masai Mara. Now, the undulating savannas of the Mara Plains is where most of the photography or the travel to Masai Mara happens because it's the dominant habitat. It covers most of the reserve. Uh, the great part is because these are all grasslands, there's very little vegetation obstructing your view. You actually get great visibility over vast areas. It's easy to spot wildlife uh, across Mara. And it also, because it's such an open ecosystem and you're able to get good views of the animals, it also helps from a photography perspective. It also helps in composition and in terms of light. You can actually try and get yourself into good light to watch the animal well, to photograph the animal well. And of course, the other part of Mara, which is very interesting, is the abundance of wildlife. That tiny little portion of Serengeti actually has one of the highest densities of big mammals in Africa. In fact, I think a couple of years back, this was just before the pandemic, we had met a couple from South Africa who have been traveling all over Africa, and they had these photography permits across many countries, video permits across many countries, but they still were choosing to spend time in Mara. And obviously, the question was, when you have freedom to travel across places like Botswana, Zimbabwe and South Africa and stuff. Why are you even why are you coming and uh, driving around in Mara? And their simple answer was you don't get to see wildlife anywhere else like you get to see it in Mara. Just because of the density of mammals, the number of lions that you get there, the amount of prey density that's out there, it's just incredible. And Mara's got about 90 species of mammals that have been recorded from there and over 500 species of birds. So even in terms of diversity, it's actually quite diverse. So some of the iconic mammals of Africa are very, very easily seen in the Mara, right? Like, of course, the savanna elephant, uh, probably the largest land creature. Lions, and I was mentioning earlier, and I'm going to talk about it a few more times, that lions, the density of lions, the number of lions in Mara is probably one of the highest again in Africa. It is said that a place like Kruger, just for comparison, a place like Kruger, which is about 15 times the size of Masai Mara, has only about twice the number of lions. So you can actually imagine the kind of density that we're talking about over here. And because you're in such an open habitat, there are so many different kinds of photographs that you can actually make and actually get really, really close up to the animals at times. They'll be just sitting by the road, and all you have to do is just, you drive up slowly, you carefully and stuff. Most of them are used to vehicles. You end up making nice, beautiful portraits of some of the wildlife out there. In addition to portraits, sometimes you also have these wonderful sightings. This was, I think, the first sighting of this young cub. The mother had just got her out into the open. And this was the first time anybody was actually seeing the cub. This was again in 2019. Sometimes magic like this happens where you're actually coming face to face with one of the more formidable predators of Africa, and then the tiny little one just walking in front of it. And reminds me of Actually, this is what we are living through in Bangalore right now, the rains, right? And it does rain in Mara from time to time. The rains actually gives some very nice, it gives a very nice feel to the place. It gives some very nice opportunities to make photographs. So these are, of course, the fastest land animals, the cheetahs. This is a cat that is very rarely seen in Mara. It's called the serval. The serval is predominantly crepusculous and nocturnal. So you don't get to see a lot of it in the day as such. But this was one evening where we actually had fantastic luck with this particular individual. And this one was just prancing all around the jeep. And we just got some phenomenal moments with it. We spent quite a bit of time with this cat. Right? It was out in the open. It was just a very beautiful evening. It's serval is a much smaller cat than the cheetah. It's probably how would I say? It's probably this smaller, slightly smaller than a jackal, but it's got these very long legs, which it kind of uses to jump into the air and stuff. It's a very unique looking animal. It's a very beautiful looking animal. This is the jackal from one of the jackals from Masai Mara. This is called the black-backed jackal, and that's a young pup sitting next to it. Just giving you a glimpse of what you would actually see. So you enter into Masai Mara, you start your game drive, you actually start seeing a whole lot of diversity. And these are animals which are fairly, I would say, you kind of keep looking out for them. You will start finding them one by one. So this is just like a glimpse of how, a safari might start unfolding. Of course, again, we're back to the rains, and that's a spotted hyena uh, enjoying itself in the rain. The rain again in the Mara it's a great time to make some photos. If you find an animal, you would stop and you would just kind of wait to see what all it does in the rain. Sometimes you get some very nice shots. Of course, it's the Masai Mara, of course, has a whole lot of antelopes and stuff, and we will see a few more of them going forward. It is the prey base that actually supports the number of predators and the density of predators. This is an impala, one of the mid-sized antelopes of Mara. And this is one of the smallest antelopes in the world. It's called a dik. In the photograph, it actually looks fairly large, but this is probably about a foot or a foot and a half tall up to its head. So it's a very, very small little antelope. And these guys are quite shy. They just come out and you just get a couple of shots and it's disappeared into the bush. So this was one of those very lucky shots early in the morning. And of course, what's Africa without its most feared or dangerous animal? The Based on the number of run-ins humans have with it, the hippo. And you'll see them lounging all over Mara's rivers, all these tiny water bodies that are around. And this one was again, this was this very muddy pool right next to the road. And this one was just like, trying to figure out who's coming to its territory. And it's not just mammals. Mara has plenty of birds too, and it's certified as an important bird area by BirdLife International, with over 500 species of birds recorded from the park. Of course, a lot of them are also migrants. They're also winter migrants that come down from Europe and stuff, but it's a sizable number of species for a single park. For context, India has about 1,300 species of birds, and some of our parks like Kaziranga and Hall have about 500 to 600 species of birds recorded from there as well. So the previous one was what's known as a black-bellied bustard. Uh, India, we have four species of bustards that we get. This one is about the same size as a McQueen's bustard that we get in the western part of India. And this is one of the largest or the heaviest flying birds in the world. It's called a Kori bustard. Very similar, very closely related to the Great Indian bustard. The Great Indian bustard, of course, is on the verge of extinction. I think probably fewer than 100 individuals remain. The Kori bustard is fairly widespread across Africa. So it's probably at a much lesser risk of going extinct anytime soon. That's a lappet-faced vulture. This is it's I think the largest vulture in terms of wingspan and in terms of size in Africa. And the lappet-faced vulture, like most African vultures and Asian vultures, is on the brink of extinction. This is an endangered species. Uh, uh, for similar reasons, there's a lot of persecution of vultures also that happens in Africa by poachers. So this is a species that is disappearing quite fast. We get to see these quite often at hunts. Whenever there is a cheetah hunt or a lion hunt, we get to see lappet-faced vultures and a whole bunch of other vultures over there. And some other birds of prey slash stork. So there is the marabou stork, a very vulturine looking stork on the left side, a very tall bird. You can actually see the colors are quite pretty. The middle one is a marsh owl. We were very lucky to encounter a group of these early in the morning as we were kind of heading out into the savannah. And this one just stayed in the lights of our car. So we got some nice shots of it. The last one is the martial eagle. The martial eagle is again an endangered species, probably one of the species that is one of the species of eagles that is disappearing the fastest along with the battledore across Africa. A lot of hunting apparently is the reason for that. Look out for the martial eagle. It's actually a massive, massive eagle, and sometimes it tends to take down small mammals and stuff. It could actually be a pretty cool sight to watch for. Are a couple of my favorite birds in one slide as such, and I really can't get enough of either of them. Both of them are really big birds. The one on the left side is called the secretary bird. It is pretty much an eagle on stilts. It is one of those products of evolution where an eagle. It was kind of placed for some time under cranes. Like early taxonomists were very confused as to where to place this bird. Eventually, now we know that it is part of the family of Accipitridae, which includes your eagles and hawks and everything. And it's actually a very stately bird. It kind of walks around the grassland and keeps stomping prey with those really, really long legs. That crest again, it's kind of one of those very, very photogenic birds as well. The one on the right side of the screen is the southern ground hornbill. Uh, Adds that real nice dash of red to a grassland where most of the colors are usually shades of brown or gray, right? So it's a it's again a very colorful bird. Again, a very, how to say, it's a fairly powerful bird. Kind of, it's almost, I think, about a meter tall. And there are groups of them that actually walk around the grassland looking for prey. So they're predominantly not tree birds. They probably use the trees for roosting. But during the day, they are out on the ground. So that's why it's called the ground hornbill. So they kind of walk around in the grasslands looking for prey. I've seen them carrying hares and stuff as well. So they take down pretty large mammals as well, in addition to probably frogs and snakes and a whole bunch of other things. That's quite amusing to watch. Like 4 or 5 of these guys just walking around the grassland. It's quite an interesting sight. A little bit more color in the Mara. On the left side is a little bee eater, and on the right side, this time we kind of were very lucky to find this one. It's an African dwarf kingfisher, a really, really tiny bird. It's probably about, I don't know, maybe half the size of my palm. Both of these again on the riverine habitat. So when you drive past the rivers or when you drive along the rivers, or if you're staying inside the Mara and you're staying in one of the camps, go looking out for some of these birds. You get mouse birds, you get a whole lot of other birds as well. It's a fantastic ecosystem to explore. And of course, yeah, this is one of the prettiest birds for me at least. It's called a violet-backed starling. Just the number of shades of blue and purple and violet on its back is just outstanding for me. And the way it kind of contrasts with the white, wow, it's just something else. Again, you need for birds like this where the colors are so contrasty, where you have these very dark shades of blues or purples or any other color contrasting with white. You need to try and photograph it in good light. So Ideally, you try to photograph it early in the morning or late in the evening where the sunlight is falling on the bird. Or a situation like this where it's kind of overcast and you can actually get it against a green background or a brown background so that the colors kind of stand out. This was again one of those absolutely wow finds. We were just driving, we were looking for rhinos in one of the thickets, and then suddenly this one just came and burst in front of the car. It was just brilliant. So yeah, so that was basically a quick intro to how to the diversity of Mara. Again, it doesn't even scratch the surface of what all you can get to see in Mara. Those are just the highlights of what you should be looking for or what you can actually see in Mara. Now I'm going to kind of like try and take you through a few of the things which I think are for me, representative of the Mara because an ecosystem like Masai Mara, which has been traveled to like so many times, it has been covered in so many different documentaries, so many different talks, so many photographers have done extensive work on it. It would be impossible for me to kind of like cover the length and depth of everything about the place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a few things which over my trips I found very fascinating about Mara, and one of them is of course the lions. And it is no exaggeration that typically after the second day, if you're staying for a longer duration, after the second day, you would actually say, "Oh, there's a lion lying there. That's fine. Let's move ahead. Let's go look for something else." Right? They are like that common. But if you know where to look, if you look at the right places, lions are everywhere in Masai Mara. I mean, like typically in all our trips, the first thing we kind of come across is lions. Right? We kind of drive and we see a pride of lions, and we just settle down there because there's always something happening. Lions get more active in the evenings typically, so you kind of like spend time with them, make some photographs and stuff. Do that the second day, and then after that you're like, okay, let's look for something more interesting to happen. But yeah, most of the time, if during the day, if you're kind of going through Mara, that's how you would see lions just lazing around. These cats love to sleep. They apparently sleep for about 16 to 18 hours a day. And they're just like lounging wherever they find place, they're like out. Most of the time, they are lounging under bushes or shrubs or trees because there's shade. The Mara plains can get quite hot in the day if it's a sunny day. But on a day like this, where it's overcast and there is probably going to be rain coming in, you can see them just lounging in the grass itself, right out in the open. And I don't know if you noticed, but there's an elephant in the background as well in the right hand corner. So that's Mara for you. You will always see some other animals as well. So it's estimated that there are about 850 to 900 lions in the reserve and surrounding conservancies. It's again one of the largest densities in all of Africa. And you get to see a lot of stuff. Like typically, when you start spending time with lions, you just go and you sit with a herd, with a pride, sorry. You start seeing the first thing that you notice, especially the young ones, is play. Right? The play just doesn't stop. The play is on and on unless suddenly there's a hunt and everybody gets serious and stuff. The play is continuous. It's an ongoing thing with the lion pride. And yeah, that was again, I think that was my first lion sighting from Africa and from Masai Mara rather. And it's just these two youngsters going at each other. And you get to see a lot of this as well. The aunts, the mothers, of course, kind of love to indulge the young ones in play. It's probably a way to kind of pass on learning and get them to be these fearsome predators that they will eventually become. But there's a lot of play, and the amount of indulgence that happens is insane. As in the amount of play fights, the amount of cuddling around. It's just incredible with the lions. Yeah, of course, the youngsters are always going on at it. Here, these guys had just accomplished the task of chasing away a hippopotamus from that pit behind them. Of course, I think the hippo just went away for whatever reason it got bored. But they seem to be a happy bunch. They seem to have had that smile of accomplishment on them. And of course, lions mating. This is again something that pretty much goes on for a few hours once it starts. So if you find lions waiting, you just have to find yourself a nice place where there's good light and you should be able to make some nice photographs. And the other thing that lions do is, of course, eat, right? And it could be an old kill, it could be a new kill, but you see them at near a kill at some point of time or the other. And a lot of the other predators, like you actually see a jackal lying next to the lion, and there's a hyena, of course, walking in expectantly to kind of try and get a piece of that bone. But these are not very uncommon sights. Again, lions are always trying to find something to eat because big prides, everyone needs to eat. So let's get to the next part of my talk, which is the hunt, right? And this is something that all of us want to see when we go to Mara. We want to see these predators hunt. We want to kind of see them, in action, see the full glory of the movement. Of course, as in I have not posted any gory pictures. There's just probably one photograph in the entire series where you know the lions are eating something, but otherwise it is just the process of the hunt which I've kind of tried to post here because I know some people are not very comfortable with pictures of blood and stuff. So I'll try and give you a fair warning before I show you that picture. I hope I remember where it comes up. So often, when we talk about cheetahs, right, and these are the fastest land animals, and uh, contrary to what a lot of stuff I learned while growing up, cheetahs actually hunt in coalitions a lot of times. They form these coalitions of 2 to 5 individuals, and they hunt together. It probably gives them a much higher success rate. And all the hunts I've seen so far have been of coalitions. There's been a couple of hunts of five and a couple of hunts of two cheetahs hunting. And a lot of times it is not like how they show in a documentary where it starts and it kind of gets over in like those 3 or 5 minutes. It takes a long, long time. Like this particular hunt happened on the second day of our previous trip last year. It was an evening and we had seen these two cheetahs. They were kind of lying in the grass. There was a herd of topi maybe about 500 meters away from them. So it took almost like a very laborious 2 to 2.5 hours for the cheetahs to slowly get up, and they would crawl a bit, they would again lie down in the ground, and they would again look up. You would just see one ear and one eye probably peeking out of the grass. Again, they would kind of go down. So all you would see is this group of topis that is grazing on one side, and just like a basic idea of where the cheetahs are. And this just went on and on and on. And by the time the cheetahs probably got to about half the distance, something alerted the topis and they were off. And this whole thing took about 2.5 hours to get to about 300 meters or something like that. So they move really slowly if they have to. There's no cover in the grassland. The grass is their only cover. So they have to really, really make sure they're not being seen by even a single one of those topis. So after those 2.5 hours, we were like, okay, what do we do now? Now that the hunt is off, should we wait or should we kind of go ahead? Then we said, okay, since it's already evening, it was almost, I think, 5 o'clock or 5:30 in the evening. And we said, okay, let's just follow the cheetahs. Let's see if we can make some nice shots of them walking around and probably a few silhouettes if they still hang around with us till sunset. So we just started following them. Yeah, that was what was happening most of the time. They would just be like walking around, yawning, just simply looking around. They would just stop, survey their area, walk forward. This again went on for about an hour. The light became better, so we were like really thankful that we had waited for a while because we got some very nice silhouettes of cheetahs walking. Uh, Very purposeful. They're kind of like trying to kind of find something, but actually, in reality, it almost seemed that they'd given up and they were like trying to find a place to rest. So they kept moving on and on. And at some point of time, there was this group of wildebeest that appeared quite a bit of a distance again away from them, maybe about again, I would say about 300 to 500 meters away from them. And we were like, it's already too late. It was already past sunset. And we were not sure if the cheetahs would hunt at that point of time. But then suddenly the cheetahs had disappeared. We were like, hey, they were right here. Where did they go? And we realized that they'd actually gone, circled all around, and they had gone to the other side and they were like preparing for the hunt. And before we knew it, it started and it was over. It just took probably, after waiting for about what, 4.5 hours or whatever it was, everything just happened in a matter of maybe about 20 seconds. They just went, one of them went forward, the other one came from behind, grabbed this young wildebeest, and that was the end. This was actually shot at, I think, ISO 6400 or something like that. Really, really, really low light. This was after dark, pretty much. And yeah, that was pretty much over for the wildebeest. So we spent some time while they kind of fed on the wildebeest. And that's just one of the photos from the feeding session. And these things keep happening. It's exactly the same thing across all the hunts that we saw. It takes a while for the hunt to build up. You would assume that, okay, these guys are just lying down, they're probably in no mood to hunt. It all just picks up within a matter of seconds. Within a matter of seconds, the energy completely changes, and you suddenly have cheetahs running towards the wildebeest. The wildebeest, suddenly one of them has picked up uh, the uh, uh, the signs of cheetahs running towards it, and they're off. And suddenly these guys go after one individual, and they kind of go and grab it. This is another hunt again from Mara. That's a wilder. That's again a young wildebeest that this one got after. And that's the second one coming, trying to kind of put it down, and that was the end of the wildebeest. So that was pretty much the thing. So the entire hunt lasted probably again about 20 to 30 seconds at most. Really, really lucky to be at the right place. We were actually, there were about 30 other vehicles out there. We were like right there where we had stood. The hunt actually happened exactly opposite that. So really thankful for that. And this was a quite kind of a, I would say, mixed feelings about this kind of hunt. And these are things that happen quite often. So it's also topi carving season around September, October. And this calf maybe must have been about, I don't know, maybe a couple of hours old, maybe. And we were watching these five cheetahs. It was a very, very sunny day, a lot of the mirage on the grassland. And we could just watch these five uh, cheetahs walking towards us, really far away. And we knew that something was going to happen. These guys are probably going to go after the topi. And they chose to go after this particular mother and baby. And because there were five of them, they were able to kind of like go after them individually. So there were three of them that straight away went and caught the mother. And when we looked at the other side, there was another one carrying the baby. So it was, I would say, again, mixed feelings. But then again, the predator has to survive. The predator also has to kind of, take its lineage forward. So, but what also happens, a lot of these sightings, like I said, vultures, right? The vultures kind of come in massive numbers. They keep circling, and suddenly you'll have these 60, 70 of them, 100 of them probably sitting all around. And they just wait very patiently in a very disciplined way. They keep having their own little skirmishes. They keep jumping up and down. They keep flying around and coming back and all that. But they don't try to go and disturb the cheetahs, probably because there are two or more of them at the same place. But they just sit there. They just wait very patiently, and they kind of wait for uh, the cheetahs to finish their kill, finish have their fill, and that's one of the types of cheetahs feeding. And then as the cheetah walks away, suddenly when all the cheetahs kind of leave the kill, it is just it's just a crazy rush. All the vultures just jump onto the carcass. I just hadn't anticipated that. This time was probably the maximum number of vultures I had seen. This was close to over 100 vultures and marabou storks and a whole bunch of other things. And it was just a ball of feathers flying all over the place. All of them were like trying to get at the last remaining morsels of the topis. And Eventually, it actually kind of became an anticlimax because out of nowhere, suddenly this hyena walks in. It just walks straight into the middle of that feathered ball, picks up the largest piece that was remaining out there, and walks away. Other nothing else. There was absolutely like uh, complete anticlimax for the birds because they were like hoping that they would kind of get something. This guy just walks in, walks straight into the ball, picks up the biggest piece of meat that's remaining, and just walks away. That was the end of that for the bird. So it can be quite interesting. So just keep watching. I think the thing with Mara is you need to have patience. And it's true with any kind of wildlife or wildlife anywhere, is that you need to have patience. You need to kind of you need to just be there, wait till it is all over. Like I think it's one of those sayings that say it's not over till it's over, right? So just wait for that. This was a hunt that happened right in front of our Jeep, and there was really nothing else to do but to try and get some close-ups because this was right there. It was like right in front, probably about 5 feet or 6 feet away in front of the Jeep. And there was really nothing we could do. We were just watching it, and there was no movement. We couldn't move. There was not really maneuverability because there were a lot of jeeps in that area. And this I like the frame because I could see that I can see both the lion and the wildebeest's faces and stuff. I wish there was a little bit more blur in the background, but well, I think that was one of the hunts that I really liked. Of course, that's a zebra, and they were kind of feeding on it for a while when we got there early in the morning. Leopards have a very interesting thing with the kills, right? So once they have hunted something, they would kind of store it on top of a tree. And the first time we saw the kill on the tree as such, I was like, this tree looks too thin for a leopard to even be able to climb it. The leopard must be a really tiny one. And this massive guy turns up. He's probably one of the oldest leopards in the area, really, really bulky leopard. And I was like, how does it get onto those tiny branches at the top? Right? Those branches are really like, I don't even know if they can take the weight of anything like that. But the leopard managed to climb up all the way there, feed on the dead antelope, and again get back all the way down. So it's quite amazing how wildlife has adapted to this kind of an ecosystem. And it's not just big cats, right? Hunts also happen with other stuff. Earlier, there was the photograph of the bee with a bee in its beak. Here, there's a ground hornbill playing with a beetle. Sometimes you also get larger prey, like I mentioned earlier, but keep looking around. As in, Mara is a place where there's a constant uh, race between the predator and the prey, and it's quite interesting to kind of observe some of this. And the other thing I really like about Mara, and this is where the rolling grasslands, the beautiful grasslands kind of make themselves so much more amenable for photography is during the sunrise and the sunset. Because one, you get this very beautiful golden light. You have the sun setting all the way down to the horizon, rising all the way from the horizon. So you get this very beautiful light. You're not waiting for the sun to come above the trees or the mountains, something like that. You just get this very nice light at sunrise, sunset. And you also get this very nice color in the skies, especially when you have a little bit of clouds. Uh, Again, some very interesting photography can happen. The simplest form of photography is to just wait for the sunlight to fall on the animal. And you can make some very beautiful portraits. In golden light, you have the animal in all its beautiful colors. You can actually see all the details. It actually looks very nice. Right? Here's a lion and lioness and a cub walking in beautiful golden light. Again, so again, like because of the undulating landscapes, sometimes your car is actually parked way below the level of the ground. So you're actually like maybe about a couple of feet below the line in terms of the vehicle, and then you just stand up and you photograph. You actually get some very nice shots like this, where it almost seems like you're lying down on the ground and taking a photograph. Close-up portraits. Again, this one is shot with sunlight coming from behind, but the golden light really helps in bringing out that little bit of uh, fringe lighting around the cheetah as well as that beautiful golden light on the grassland behind. I really like one of these portraits. And again, another thing with using side light that's coming from, I think, the left side of the frame. Uh, so early morning dew again plays a very nice role in terms of, getting these tiny little bouquet all around the line. So this is again one of my favorite lioness portraits from Mara. Beautiful morning light, a cub running, and just, the outline being highlighted. A lot of these things, as a photographer, what I would do is to kind of underexpose slightly so that, the light around the lion is what kind of comes out at the right exposure. The lion itself may not be seen in full detail, but you actually get to see the form and the shape. That's again a silhouette at sunrise. The thing with sunrise and silhouettes is that you get very limited time. Unlike sunsets, where you get a slightly longer window of time, maybe about 10 to 15 minutes. At sunrise, you probably get just about one third of that time, and you have to kind of try and find a good subject at that point of time to take some nice photographs with colorful skies. Uh, we had kind of like come across this pride of lions, and we were just hoping that one of them would come out. It was a very bushy area. There were a lot of lions, and they were kind of like quite active early in the morning. But then, luckily, this young lioness was, she just came up. She was waiting for cubs to kind of come up to her. So, uh, good opportunity to make a silhouette early in the morning. And again, one of my favorite silhouettes of an ostrich as such. Sometimes it's also good to just have the sun in the frame. This is just after sunrise. Of course, the sun gets completely whited out. There is no way you can get color in the sun along with colors in the sky and everything else. But I really like how the ostrich's neck kind of gets lit up by the sun. And this is the largest or the second largest antelope in the world, the largest antelope in Mara as such. It's called the eland. It's the size of a big bull. It's actually a massive antelope. And I was actually very surprised. Last trip was the first time I actually saw the elands run. And the way they run is quite, it's unbelievable given the size of the animal. And this was one of the evenings at sunset that we had kind of come across this one. It was a beautiful sky again, a lot of clouds around, so giving a lot of color in the sky. And I really like the silhouette of this animal. That's a herd of wildebeest that is probably going from one place to other to graze, I guess. But this is at sunset again and again. Look at how the clouds kind of make the colors from orange to pinks to those very weird blues coming up on top of the screen. They just kind of create so many different layers in the sky. And again, thanks to the flat landscape, you're actually able to see the entire animals walking through. You can see the entire row of animals walking away. When I made this photograph, my guide, I came back and I told my guide that, I'd made this photograph of elephants, I'd made this photograph of elephants. And one of the questions that he asked immediately was, did you get the legs? And because if I was a little, how would I say, higher probably, the legs would have merged along with the grass and it would just be a massy lump, right? It would just be probably like how the last elephant on the left side is. It would just be like a big square thing in the horizon. So getting the entire animal or being low enough to get a silhouette is very, very important when you're in a place like Mara. Okay. Sometimes that's not possible. Uh, but then a giraffe is a very iconic animal, right? You can actually see the shape of the giraffe silhouetted against the sky. And I would have loved to make this photograph with the entire giraffe. But then I like this composition too, just because I think the tree adds to the whole picture. And then of course, the clouds coming in on the top and beautiful colors in the middle just forms a nice picture of this herd of giraffes walking. So there's just two of them in the frame again. But yeah, as in you can look for good options everywhere. So that's what Mara is, this place where you can actually seek out compositions out of every frame. Just keep looking around, see how you can make shots. A lot of times you have enough time to actually figure out compositions. Of course, in a case like this, you're hoping that the sun doesn't really set too fast and there's a little bit of light in the horizon. You're hoping for the giraffes not to walk away. But otherwise, it's a fantastic place to kind of just work, wait, watch, work on your compositions. That's an impala again at sunrise and sunset. And this is again one of the pictures which is very weird for me, for the simple reason that it completely distorts perspective. That tree is really not that tall. As in, at that particular height, it should be about what, about 40 feet tall, at least. You don't have such, it's not such a massive tree at all. It's just a perspective distortion. The tree is much closer to me than the topi. The topi is at a slightly farther away distance, so it looks really, really tiny compared to the tree. But these are again things you can actually play around with stuff. You can play around with stuff that actually interests you in terms of how you want to make your photographs. That's just a nice little silhouette of a tree. Why should animals be there in every frame? Sometimes it could just be the tree and just the landscape. And of course, the beautiful sky, just crazy number of colors in the sky that day. And this is again one of my favorite what would I say, events that happened a few years ago. And yeah, I would it's I would like to call it an opera at sunset, but it could be yeah, we could have multiple names for it. And it all started off with this. We were driving around and we had found a serval and we had spent some time with the serval and then it was already getting dark. So we were like, okay, we found this pride of lions and they were doing nothing. Like there were these three female lions. I think probably two of them were young ones. One of them was an adult. And they were just like lying around over there. And we thought, okay, they might make some nice silhouettes because they were on a higher ground than us. And, we could actually spend some time. If they just got up and they moved around, we could start making some nice shots. And get up they did eventually. So the two young ones kind of got up. They started playing around. They started walking around. So you could just see, it's almost as if one lion has two tails over here. Uh, this is one of the things that you have to be very careful of. Whenever you're shooting lions, please budget for their tails because for some reason I found it is not an easy thing to get the entire lion in a frame, especially when there's a lot of play happening around. So be very careful with that. Uh, Coming back to the thing, so they started walking around and stuff, and suddenly on the horizon, this guy appeared. This massive male just appeared out of nowhere. Probably he was just lying down on the other side of the slope, but he just got up and came. And he came into this very beautiful, gorgeous setting. And we were like, wow. And the cameras just wouldn't stop clicking, of course. And, just looking at a lion in this kind of a setting was just magnificent. I mean, it just looks like the Lion King poster coming alive. Right? And the female got up and she came towards him. And I really wish it wasn't that windy that day because both of them sang. They actually sang for almost, I don't know, I think it was 10 minutes or probably it could have been longer. Probably, I have no idea. But they just roared and roared and roared, and it was impossible to catch it on the phone or on the camera because the winds were really, really high that day. I wish I had a better recorder at that time. But this was one of those sites which is absolutely one of the most memorable sites in wildlife for me. They just kept singing, singing, singing. It was quite nice to watch them do that. They roared for quite a bit of a time. And then, of course, after a point, he started walking towards the cubs, and they came towards him to greet him. And there was almost like they were having this little dance kind of thing. It was a beautiful sight, and could start getting dark by that time, and he had to eventually leave him and move on. But this was one of those moments, where you just want to spend time. You just want to watch. You're just hoping that the lion cubs get up and you get some shots of the lion cubs, and all this happens. And that's what it is. You just have to have patience. You just wait at a place in Mara, magic will happen. Uh, One last story before uh, I I wind this up. I think probably there's just a few more slides on monochrome, but one last story before I wind up. So this is a female called Nashipai. She has these four cubs at the moment as well, I think. And this was last year's tour when we went there in October. And this was the first evening of the tour. We came across her feeding on a carcass, and then all the young ones were also feeding on the carcass. It was quite magical to watch them. But as a photographer, there's always that one little thing, right? You're kind of like hoping for that perfect shot with the entire family coming together. You want to have that nice little family portrait happening. And this was a place where we realized after a very long wait that it wasn't going to happen because one, they were all very busy feeding. So once the young ones had a bit of their fill, they would just walk around, they would do a little bit of play, they would again go back to the carcass. And the female would stand up and she would keep a watch around and stuff. So we realized that, we're not going to have the perfect portrait happening over here, but it was fun to watch them. It was really, really fun to watch such young cubs of cheetahs and stuff. And over the next few days, we kept coming across them because they are quite well protected by the park management because cheetahs haven't been breeding very well in the Mara over the past few decades. And the park management wants to ensure that the maximum amount of protection can be given to them for them to again start breeding well. So over the next few days we kept coming across them, but then they were either resting or they would be like walking around in the grasslands and stuff. So that real nice shot of all of them together wasn't really coming through until the last morning. And we kind of left early that day because we had to also finish the safari and then head to the airport. And we left at about, I think, about 10 minutes from our lodge. We come across this site, and just the most magical way to kind of bring the tour to an end was watching all of them just sitting there. They were all huddled up, probably just waking up to the morning. uh, she was very used to jeeps and stuff, and I think over a period of time even the young ones had gotten used to them, so they were all quite watchful, but they were kind of going about their own business as such. From time to time, they would just look up all of them and then again, go back to feeding themselves and stuff. So we got some very nice photographs of the family. And then the sun came up and there was again a lot of movement around and stuff. So try to get something. There's too much of grass. There was too much of stuff. So I was like, okay, there's some such nice light. I hope she kind of goes into some good light and poses for a nice photograph. And I don't know why, but she seemed to be very obliging that day, and this happened. And this, I think, probably is my favorite photograph from the Mara. It's just one of those things. It's just one of those very, very special moments, right? You're looking at the grassland, you're looking at one of the most iconic animals of Africa, and those tiny little ones that hold a hope for the next generation. So it's just one of those pictures where kind of everything kind of came together on the last day of the trip. So yeah, absolutely one of those heartwarming moments. Uh, just a last quick thing on monochrome before we respond. So there are a lot of times when the moment is right, the feeling is right, the emotion is right, but the colors don't add up, right? Like a photograph like this, for example, was completely brown and green and a lot of shades of gray. It was in the like it was about 9 o'clock. The light was already quite harsh. There was not really much happening in terms of color as such. So I decided, why don't I take out color and make it a high key image, make it slightly brighter, bring out the subjects and stuff. And this is one of my favorite scenes as such. It's just that very nice bonding moment between a lioness and one of the members of a pride, one of the younger members of a pride. So for me, I think that's where I would resort to monochrome, where there is something either about the story, about the emotion, or about the composition, and the colors don't add to it. The colors kind of don't complement what you're trying to convey over there. Like this is again one of my favorite shots. It's almost like ants walking uh, on the ground, right? These are again wildebeest walking. The actual photo has a very dull blue sky behind and a brownish ground. Again, something I would really not look at twice. But for me, just that whole thing, that entire symmetry of them walking was good for me to kind of like convert this into a black into a monochrome. So look for things like that. I think sometimes even in the most uncluttered of places where you have this very clean landscape, you might want to see what can I remove from the landscape for it to be more interesting. And sometimes it is just color. This one I went a little bit dark. It was from the I don't know if it was the same sequence as the first one, but I decided kind of make it a little more dark and uh, brooding. It just went with the overall atmosphere. It was almost as if the next generation is kind of walking in as as a predator, as the king of the grassland kind of a thing. Another example, this was one of those late nights, last photograph that I want to process, and I just decided to go a little berserk with stuff. So it's just one of those experiments with a little bit of sepia, a little bit of reverse vignetting, kind of making it all whitish kind of a thing. But then again, yeah, as in the actual photo again is just brown and green and stuff. I just thought, why don't I try and make it a little more interesting with all these textures coming into the frame. Added a little bit more noise into the frame as well to make it a little more texturish. And that's the final result of it. Some of these are experiments. I think a lot of creativity kind of moves forward with experiments. So this is one of them. Of course, no story on Mara would be complete without the greatest spectacle that Mara kind of lays host to, right? And that's the Great Migration. The Great Migration is one of the seven natural wonders of Africa. This is something which all of us have heard about, all of us have read about. We've seen countless footages and videos and photographs of it. This is a spectacle that happens every July to September uh, uh, between Kenya and Tanzania. And about 1.5 million, 1.3 million wildebeest, about 500,000 Thompson's gazelles, about 200,000 zebras, about 100,000 topi, elands, all of them cross across the river. And it is a spectacle because, one, the sheer numbers, right? This is something that apparently started in the 1960s or the 1970s because the numbers started to improve. The number of uh, antelopes and zebras and stuff started to grow in Mara. And in search of their food, they started these migrations. Uh, and it's one is the sheer numbers of animals. The second is, of course, when there are so many herbivores, there are, of course, carnivores and predators waiting for them. So, in addition to the big cats, you also have the crocodiles in the river that are waiting for these animals to cross. So, it is quite a spectacle to watch this kind of gathering of animals, probably one of the largest gathering of animals on the planet. Of course, why do they migrate? It's, of course, because of food. And apparently, herds of this size need about 4,500 tons of food every day. So they need to keep moving and finding new pastures. And this is probably the route that they have chartered over a period of time to kind of find food throughout the entire year. And of course, as in with that, I would kind of conclude the presentation. I've run over time by about 10 minutes than what I promised. But we are going to Masai Mara this August, and I have two tours that I'm conducting, one on August 18th to 24th, and the second one from 25 to 31. We have a couple of spaces open on both of these trips. And both these trips are in the heart of the Great Migration season, so we should have a good opportunity to watch a crossing or two, hopefully, fingers crossed. Uh, So on my trips, we kind of stay inside Masai Mara. So we stay inside the national park in a tented camp. The tented camp kind of has comfort, has the basic comforts. It's got good food. It's in the midst of wilderness. You are just surrounded by a fence, and you are living in these tents. It's managed and run by Maasai people who know their animals really, really well. And they are all the time 24 bar 7 on vigil to make sure that you enjoy the lap of wilderness in all the safety. And these are views from the dining area. So we are on the Talek River. and you see elephants from where you're having your food. There is this pod of hippopotamus that's always in the river at that point. So it's just wildlife all around. I mean, it's just wildlife all around. One night I was actually like sitting up and chatting up with my guide, and there was this hyena that started walking into the camp as well. I kind of pointed it out to him, and he's like, "Oh, okay." And he just made a very weird sound, and the thing just went away. It just walked away from the camp. So it's quite interesting how well they know their animals as well, and it's fantastic in interacting with with them during the trip, as much as it is watching the wildlife. So it's just a brilliant experience. And safari drives, we have vehicles which are similar to this, like these nice long Land Cruisers, where we'll have three people in each vehicle in the front, in the back. So you get one entire seat to yourself. So you get both the windows on the left and the right, and you can kind of like take photographs, watch wildlife, whichever side it comes of the vehicle. And we'll have a couple of the top guys in Masai Mara. These guys are really good, and I think Saurabh will vouch for that as well. Saurabh has been part of the trip a few years back. And one of the things about staying inside the Mara is that you get early entry and late exit from the savannah. So because you're inside Mara, you just need to cover about 15-20 minutes to get back to the camp. So we get to get out really early and watch the sunrise, get these very nice golden light shots of animals and stuff. And in the evening again, we kind of get back quite a bit after sunset. So we get beautiful opportunities at both sunrise and sunset as well. So that's about Mara. So let me know, as in if you're interested, please drop me an email or drop me a message, and I will be happy to help you out on this. Of course, the other expedition I'm conducting at the end of the year is to Antarctica, and this is an 11-day expedition that I'm doing from December 1st to 11th. So if you're interested in Antarctica, or if any of your friends are interested, please let us know. We have about 3 seats left on this trip as well. So yeah, that's the end of my talk, and my email ID and my WhatsApp is over there. So I'll open it up for questions. Any questions anybody has, or any thoughts you would like to share, either feel free to either put it up in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask as well.
No question, Shreeram, but thanks a lot for this amazing presentation. Really brilliant shots. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Arun.
Just one thing to add, Shriram. To be very honest, there's no experience like Mara. From a collective perspective of experiencing wildlife, the number of species and birds, and also for me, the most special thing are these silhouettes and the morning light. Because sadly, in India forests, even early in the morning, by the time you get in and all of that, we don't get this kind of horizon light. So the light is so good in Mara that the even a regular subject, even the most common subject, can look out to be like exceptionally beautiful because the light and the conditions are such. So yeah, Mara is like, if anybody on this group hasn't been to Mara, trust me, it's completely worth your time to go there. I've had two back-to-back trips with Shiram, and we had a lot of fun there. So I was actually there with him making the same silhouette together. So I would remember it. But yes, it's completely worth it, guys. Just go for it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Saurabh.
Thanks, Shriram. It was really a great presentation. First of all, so many stories you covered. Really, I was already motivated to visit Mara, but now it looks like I should do it immediately. So, but it was so nice seeing all that, and you mentioned couple of tips, especially the to gather the light around the subject and all that. And yeah, Saurav rightly mentioned, to get these kind of shots, you have to be early and you have to stay till late. And this looks amazing, like amazing storytelling and amazing shots. It feels really like we have been there. But yeah, definitely looking forward to the trip.
Thanks, Arun. So there was a question from Saikat Datta about the lenses that I was using. So I have used, I think across the presentation, most of the photographs are with a 400 mm lens. Uh, In my previous tips, it was 200, 400. Now it's a 400 f2.8, but typically 400 with a teleconverter, so about 560, 400 or 560 mm. Some of the photographs are also with the 70 to 200 mm lens, especially ones like the giraffe herd one and stuff, were all little closer. So these are all shot with a 70 200. And the lion sleeping on the ground, I think, was with a 1635 or something. So I would typically advise people to have lenses between, I would say, 24 mm to 400 mm at least, to kind of make the best of the opportunities that you get at Mara. Anything beyond that is superb to have, but then at least have that focal length range. Thanks so much, guys. I've been looking at the chat and I'm really, really humbled by the messages. Thank you so much. So of course, as in, if you have any other questions beyond this, of course, just feel free to call or WhatsApp me on the number that I have mentioned below. And if you have anything, of course, write to us as well. We are more than happy to answer. So I will also be kind of, I hope we've got the recording in place, but we will get that recording uploaded and I'll share it with the group as well. All right. Thanks, everyone. And